Greetings and welcome to another VMBlock screencast. In this screencast, we're going to take a look at Liquity, which is a decentralized lending protocol. Now, let's start with looking at their website. So as you can see, one of the most interesting features of Liquity is that it's interest-free. Now, what you do with this platform is you deposit your ETH and you get in return LUSD, which is a stablecoin pegged to the US dollar. And you get this at 0% interest. Amazing, huh? And it's obviously quite amazing because they've got more than 1.5 billion US dollars of total locked value in the protocol. So what I want to do in this screencast is just start looking at Liquity and see how the platform works, how does the protocol work, and we're going to take a deep dive into various parts of this through the course of several screencasts. So this is the first screencast of a few that will be coming up in the next few weeks. So let's take a look at the protocol and see how they achieve these things. So starting with 0% interest rate. Well, what they do is in this protocol, Liquity, they issue their own stablecoin, LUSD. And it's because that they issue their own stablecoin and not borrowing from another market provider that they can keep the interest rate at 0%. If they had to borrow from another provider to provide another coin, then that would likely come with an interest. But by minting their own stable coins, that interest can be kept at zero. Now, another thing that they do is that they make these coins redeemable at face value in the system, such that the coins are always going to give you the exact dollar amount of ETH when you use the redeeming feature. And the other thing is that they provide, or they issue one-off fees at either end of the process. So when a borrower borrows LUSD, the fee is charged in LUSD and added to the debt of the borrower. And when a redeemer redeems LUSD for ETH, then the fee is taken off in ETH. So these fees are used as ways to incentivize people to use the platform for redeeming LUSD, and thereby keeps the interest at 0% since the platform can make money from the fees. This is also a way of controlling the value of LUSD against the dollar. So it works as a form of pegging. The next part of this system is that it's, or property I should say of the system, is that it's immutable and decentralized. And it is a fully autonomous borrowing protocol. So this means that it's governance free. And by governance free, it means that they don't have a voting mechanism, they don't have a DAO, they don't have any admin keys. This system is deployed as a fully autonomous system in the blockchain and cannot be shut down and cannot be adjusted by any form of governance because it's governance free and admin keys free. The other thing that they have done at Liquity is they only, at least at the moment, only accept ETH as collateral. And this is to keep the platform stable and to keep it with a system that is decentralized as much as possible, rather than risking having other tokens which may not be decentralized as much as would be desirable. So keeping ETH as the only form of collateral keeps the system more decentralized. And to further the efforts for decentralization, third-party front ends are also decentralized in the form of providing incentives to front-end developers to build front ends that connect to the Liquity protocol. And so if you go to the Liquity website, you'll see that you can use a number of different front ends provided by different third parties but all of them connect to the same protocol. So this just gives the end user the choice, but also reduces the risk of a centralized front end being shut down. So that's another pretty amazing property of Liquity, is that it's immutable and decentralized. Now, the final property I'd like to cover is that it's capital efficient. So this means that we can provide, or Liquity can provide 110% collateral ratio with 11x leverage. So how does it do this? Well, one of the things it provides is something called instant liquidation. And this is provided through their stability pools. Basically, to keep this simple, a stability pool is a number of depositors who have put in LUSD tokens such that they are willing to use those tokens to buy ETH from risky positions or positions at risk of liquidation. And so when the liquidation happens, it can happen instantly because there are already a pool of buyers in the stability pool who have placed or deposited LUSD in that pool such that the liquidated positions are automatically liquidated against this pool. And we'll take a deeper dive into that in a future video. There's also liquidator incentives. That is, anyone who wants to liquidate a position are incentivized to do so by given a reward of $200 in LUSD tokens. And this is done because at the time of borrowing, each borrower must add to their debt this fee, which is held back in the debt so that the liquidators get this fee. And this is useful when gas fees are high, but if gas fees are less than $200, then there is a bit of a profit there for anyone who liquidates a position. And then finally, to keep this system as stable as possible, Liquity provides a fast and reliable oracle for giving the system and the protocol up-to-date and accurate prices of Ethereum, which is critical and central to the system's stability because it's the price of Ethereum that dictates which positions are at risk of liquidation. So these are the three main properties of the platform. Now, what happens when somebody wants to borrow LUSD with ETH as collateral? So let's take a look. So imagine we've got a borrower, let's call her Alice, and she wants to put in some ETH into the platform. So she does so by depositing the ETH into the Trove. This part here, this box here is called a Trove. Essentially, it's a position that's been opened in the protocol. And this blue line represents the amount of ETH that's been deposited. Then the system sends back LUSD tokens to Alice. So now Alice has in her wallet some LUSD tokens. And this is represented by this red bar. As you can see, the value of ETH is greater than the value of the LUSD, and this difference is the collateralized ratio, CR. So this is Alice's Trove. This is the terminology used in Liquity platform to denote a position of collateral in ETH and a debt in LUSD. So what is the minimum collateralized ratio is 110%, as we mentioned. Now, this is the absolute minimum, and it's not really recommended to go that low or open a Trove at that rate. It's probably better to go to 150% or 200% or 250% to reduce the risk of liquidation of your Trove. But your Trove will not be liquidated unless it falls below 110% under normal operations. And by normal operations, I mean that when the system is running in a healthy normal mode, there is another mode that it operates under, which is a recovery mode, which we'll look at later. But this is just to keep in mind. Now, the minimum amount that can be borrowed is 1,800 USDL, or LUSD, I should say. And there's a borrower fee of up to 5% in LUSD. And of course, there's the liquidation reserve of 200 USD that's also kept. So basically, all of these amounts go towards the debt that's allocated in the Trove here. So Alice will receive 1,800 LUSD in her wallet, and then there'll be a borrower fee of up to 5%, but it's usually lower than that. And then the 200 LUSD is also added to the debt. So the total debt is the sum of these three things, but Alice will only receive what she wanted to borrow. So let's go through an example. So Alice deposits 10 ETH when the price is $2,000 per 1 ETH, and the reserve fee is kept of $200. This is actually added to the debt. Let's say the borrow fee is 0.5% on the total amount borrowed. So if Alice wants to borrow at a collateralization ratio of 110%, given these conditions and the price of ETH at this moment, then she can borrow $17,890. So let's take a look at this actually in a running demo of the Liquity protocol. In order to run a local Liquity development demo, I have cloned from their dev monorepo, which is here in GitHub. So we can basically go to this link and you'll see here this GitHub repository, and you can grab the code by cloning it from here. Now I've already done that, but what we want to do is run the local dev version. So if we scroll down, we can see the README, it's pretty detailed. And let's scroll down to the section of the docs which is under development here. And if we look under that, we can see here, start dev front end in demo mode. So let's click on that. And as you can see, it just requires running this command, which is yarn start demo. So I'm going to copy that command and I'm going to head over to my terminal. Now in my terminal, I've already I've already changed directory into the cloned repository. So we can see the repository is here. This is the cloned repository from GitHub that I was looking at earlier. Now one thing to note is the version of Node is 12.22.11. That's because Liquity needs version 12, so I just installed the latest stable release of version 12 of Node. The other thing you need to do is install yarn. So we'll just check the version that I'm running, 1.22.18. And you need to run yarn to install all the dependencies. Now I've already done that, so what I'm going to do is just run the command to start the demo, which is yarn start-demo, as per the documentation that we just looked at. So if you have any issues with this, check out the README of the repository and it will give you guidance on how to install the dependencies and how to set everything up. Now as you can see, as it says in the README, the yarn start demo process starts a local blockchain and deploys all the contracts, starts up the front end and all the back end services, and then allows us to interact with the front end via our own browser on localhost port 3000. So that should come up in a second. And here we are. So I can copy and paste this URL or just type it into my browser. And we're in. So this is a local version of Liquity. And this is perfect for playing around with the protocol and getting to understand how everything works in Liquity. So as mentioned, we get connected automatically to a wallet, which is just running on a local blockchain, and we have 100 ETH already assigned to that wallet. And every time we hit refresh, it will create a new wallet, and another 100 ETH will be available to us. Now, interestingly, because we are basically the only person running this instance of Liquity, all the protocol statistics are at 0, with the exception of the collateralization ratio, the total collateralization ratio, which is infinity. And this is, of course, because we haven't created any Troves yet. So let's go ahead and create a Trove with this current account that we're connected to. And by the way, in order to do this, we don't need MetaMask, because again, this is running locally and this is a modified version of the front end that doesn't require MetaMask. So let's create a Trove. Let's just go ahead and create something with 2 ETH. And oh, by the way, I forgot to mention about the price feed down here, because I want to increase the price of ETH. It's currently defaults at 200. So I'm going to make that 2000. So let's type that in correctly, 2000. And then you click this button here to set the value of ETH. And this normally, of course, in mainnet would be handled by a price feed oracle, and you wouldn't be able to set this. This is done through the oracle and through the protocol in a decentralized and non-governed way. Now, there's more about the pricing oracles and how they work, including fallback mechanisms, and this is something that I will cover in another screencast. But for now, in the demo mode, we want to set the price of ETH, and I'm going to just set it to $2,000. So that means that we can come back here and we can take a look at this. So I want to create a Trove with 2 ETH. I want to borrow $1,800 US. And as you can see, this is all good. It gives us a collateralization ratio of 199, and we can go ahead and do that. Now, if I was to just increase this before I create the Trove, if I increase this to 8,000, for example, then you can see that we have this rule telling us we must be at least 110%, right? So if I set this to something that is closer to 110% by lowering this to, well, let's lower it to 600. Okay, I want to get down to, yeah, so you can see here the collateralization ratio is 147.5%, which is below 150. And interestingly, we see this message, and this will happen very rarely in mainnet, but it's interesting to note that if you try to create a Trove where it will cause the total collateralization ratio to fall below 150%, then this is rejected. This is prevented from being allowed. And because we're the first Trove on the system, you can see here, it's not possible to create this Trove. So I'm going to lower this again, and we'll just create the Trove. So now we're all good. We get a little summary here, and we can confirm that. And as mentioned, we don't need MetaMask. We don't need to sign the transactions. It happens automatically in this demo environment. So we have now one Trove, the Trove that we just created. So all the values here pretty much map to our Trove. There's a TVL of 2 ETH. There's one Trove. The LUSD supply matches what we have as our debt. And the TCR is 153.1, which matches our collateral ratio, which is because we are only one Trove. So things get more interesting if we create more Troves. So let's go in and refresh. We get another wallet. It's now 100 ETH again, but you can see the protocol statistics remain from the Trove that we just created. So let's go ahead and create a few more Troves. Let's try and create the Trove that I gave in the example, where we wanted to create something that was really low, right down to 110% collateral ratio. So that was, in that example, it was Alice who put in 10 ETH and then borrowed $17,890. Now you can see here that it does indeed, as per the calculations in the example, it does create a Trove with a CR of 110%, However, we still will cause the TCR to fall below 150%. So we can't quite create this really low CR Trove just yet. So let's borrow a little bit less and keep the CR quite high and just create a few more Troves. So we just create them real quick by refreshing and getting another Trove and creating the Trove, and we're just doing this real quickly. And I'll just create one more, again same thing, I'll just create it with 2 ETH. I'll borrow 1,800 LUSD. See the CR is pretty healthy, so we'll just go ahead and do that. Okay, so now we've got what, 4 Troves here. You can see this TCR is really healthy now, it's 269%. So if I create another Trove using the Alice example, we should be able to do this now, because it shouldn't drop the total collateralization ratio below 150%, and it doesn't. So as you can see here, if I want to now take out 10 ETH, right? Sorry, if I want to deposit into a Trove 10 ETH while the price is 2,000 ETH, $2,000 per ETH, then I can borrow 17,890 LUSD, and I get the fixed liquidation reserve, the borrow fee of this, my total debt is this, and my collateralization ratio is 110%. So this, if I confirm this now, this is a very risky Trove. It's at risk, essentially, of liquidation. In fact, I can show this by clicking risky Troves up here, scrolling down, and you can see that the Trove that I just created here is just on the verge of being potentially liquidated. Now, we can't liquidate it yet because the CR is not low enough. But if it drops ever so slightly, then we can liquidate this. And this is why we should create Troves with a CR higher than 110%. Now, how can we liquidate this, or how can we cause this Trove to be liquidated? It's just simply by reducing the price of ETH. And because we're using a demo version, we can just do this manually. So I can set the price of ETH to just $10 lower than what it was. And you can see that the TCR is still healthy at 172%. But if we look at risky Troves and scroll down, you see the Trove that we just created has now just dropped below the threshold of 110% CR, and now it's possible to liquidate. If this was in a live system and this was really happening with real price and real ETH, this would already be liquidated by a bot. But in this system, we have to manually click this button to liquidate the Trove. And liquidation is something that we're going to go through in another screencast. So this is where I will stop, and I will pause the screencast at this point. And we will continue our journey into the Liquity Protocol in the next screencast, where we'll cover liquidation and also what happens with the stability pool. So I'll see you in the next screencast. Take care.